right, everybody, we're at 4 minutes after. I see people are still slowly joining, but let's go ahead and get started today. So Dave, if you would put up the flag when you get a chance. Thank you. All right, everybody, feel free to join along. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, John Duff, would you do the invocation for us today?
Sure. Dear Lord, we thank you for this beautiful weather that you've blessed us with and the opportunity for our club to come together. Ask that you continue to guide us through the end of school year, continue to be with our community, and ask that you just help us better this community. We thank you for our speaker today, and just continue to be with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so our guest today, Linda, thank you for joining us. It's always good to see you.
Thank you.
And then our speaker today is going to be Mr. Bud Withers, a longtime sports writer. Bud, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Looking forward to it.
All right. We've got a couple more things to work through before I hand over the floor. But quick question, who is on here as Dawn today? I see Dawn, but we don't know which Dawn.
Maybe I'm mute. Oh, there he is.
Oh, there we go. All right. Okay. So announcements. I've got a couple birthdays today. Miss Jerry Young. So Dan is not joining us because he's taking her to lunch today on her special day. And then John, please wish Diana a happy birthday on the 6th for us. Is that Saturday? Is Diana's birthday on Saturday?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, wish her happy birthday for us, please.
Will do.
Okay. And then for those of you who haven't heard, Lila is back in the hospital again. They're having some additional issues, so please continue to keep them in your thoughts and prayers. They'll let us know if they need anything, but anything we can do to help support them is helpful, of course. And all right, so does anybody else have any announcements today? Dan, I thought you would. Go ahead.
Well, it's first Friday of the month, this coming Friday. So it's our turn once again to serve at Jericho Table. Anyone interested in serving Friday afternoon from 4:30 to 6?
I will.
All right, I got Linda. Anyone else?
Dan, I won't be able to make it this month. This week because we had a schedule change, so I won't be able to.
Okay. All right, that's good. And if anyone else is interested, just let me know. Thanks, Rachel.
Of course. All right, anybody else? Mike.
I just wanted to announce the foundation, Matt, we received a request from Rimrocks Trails to help fund their remodeling of their bathrooms for their facility over in Prineville. The board voted to grant them $16,667, which is a third of the project. I sent on to the club, there's ways the people that are going to do the construction have opened it up to where if we have members that want to assist to help reduce the cost, that's available to us. We're trying to get the Prineville Club to join with them and possibly the Sisters Club to kind of help spread out the cost and maybe spread out some of the help. So anyway, that's what's new here.
Thank you, Mike. I know that's going to be well used.
Yes, Earl.
Just like to remind people that our food pickup will be on the 26th, that's the Friday, And the 27th, we'll actually turn the food in. So if you do not have a food basket yet and would like one, please let me know, and we'll be glad to get it to you.
Okay, so March 26th, we're picking up, and then March 27th, delivering.
Right.
Okay. All right. And then I've also got in the calendar, May 1st is flag hole clean out. And May 6th is going to be our prayer breakfast, and that's going to be a virtual event this year. All right, anybody else before we move on? Okay, I don't see any hands. So, happy dollars. Who's happy today? Dave, I saw your hand first.
Okay, I'll pledge $5. Last night, my wife and I managed to go over to Safeway and get our first shot.
Yay!
So I'm glad we can do that. And I want to say getting the shot is not a political thing. It's for your own health and the health of the nation. So get it if you're qualified, go out and get it.
All right, who else? I know I saw other hands. All right, Mike.
I'll go for 10 happy dollars. If you were a Beaver, this last weekend was probably one of the most fabulous weekends in the world. The baseball team swept Grand Canyon 4 straight games. The men's basketball team swept the Bay Area schools. The women's basketball team beat the Ducks. The men's soccer team is now 5-0 after beating UCLA. The women's soccer team knocked off number 3 ranked and defending national champion Stanford 2-1. And the Oregon State wrestling team finished second in the Pac-12 tournament and are sending 5 wrestlers to the national championships. And then we're going to go this weekend to Bismarck and watch the grandson play in the state hockey tournament.
Oh.
Mike, how much does you pledge?
10.
That's 100. That may not happen again, Mike. You better just do 100.
You might be right. Oh.
All right, Naomi, I believe I saw your hand.
Good afternoon. I have 10 happy dollars. 5 of them are for my husband and I receiving negative COVID tests today. And the other 5 is so that we can take a very delayed honeymoon on Friday. We are going to Puerto Rico for 10 days. Our honeymoon's been canceled twice now because of COVID. And so we're going to get to a US territory if it's the last thing we do.
Naomi, that was $10?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good for you.
Do you guys have to quarantine for a period of time once you're there?
Not so. We got a rapid test today, and then we'll get our PCR test results in a few days. If those are negative, then we do not have to quarantine. And then because it's the US territory, there are no testing requirements to come home.
Gotcha. Yeah, I got an email from Carl yesterday and I said, respectfully, get off the computer. You're in Hawaii. And he responded back and he says, we're still in COVID jail. We don't get out till tomorrow. So,
oh, right.
So hopefully they're out having fun today.
Yeah.
All right. Who else? Chris, I think I saw your hand next.
Yeah, thanks. This one's in the spirit of Mike, but our Louisville Cardinals beat the Dukies, so it was an ugly fight, but that was a win, and for the beautiful sunshine. So that's 5 happy dollars.
Okay, and then Earl, I think I saw you.
I have 2 happy dollars. One is that our Spartans beat Indiana last night in the Big Ten, and today it's so nice out. We're going to go out and play golf for the first time all year.
Nice. Okay, who else? Dan.
I got a happy dollar for the beautiful sunny day and another happy dollar again for the Spartans. And they finally woke up. They've won the last 3 out of 4 games and got a couple big games this coming weekend.
All right, anybody else before we move on? I see John.
I'll put 5 in. Fingers crossed, but we will actually have a high school football game tomorrow. Redmond versus Bend JV team. And actually, you all can watch it online if you want to. If you guys are in all high school games, Redmond games, and I think Ridgeview too. You just have to download. There's an app I can forward on, and that's no cost. You just go in, register, and you can watch it on your computer. And you just follow the team you want to follow. Redmond High School, or if you guys have families with kids or grandkids other places across the country that might be playing sports, this is a great way to watch them. If you're interested, let me know and I'll be happy to forward that on. But yeah, tomorrow, a high school football game against Bend. Looking forward to that. And then the other one, can't quite come close to Mike's money and his happiness, but Oregon softball did knock off #1 UCLA this last weekend, so I was thrilled about that. So go Ducks.
Okay, Earl, again.
Oh, I got $2 more. I forgot that tomorrow, I'm really happy that we're going to have an interclub with the St. Helens Club. If anybody needs to have the password and that kind of stuff to get on, let me know, or Roland, and we'll be glad to have that. Tomorrow at noontime, we'll be meeting with the St. Helens. I'm really glad about that.
Yes, thank you both for getting that lined out and getting everybody on board. I appreciate that. Okay, anybody else? I don't see any more hands. So, okay, our joke for the day. I should have picked something sports related, but it's not. It's a math related joke. So the joke today is, there's a fine line between a numerator and a denominator, and only a fraction of people will get this joke. So, okay, Bud, the floor is all yours.
Was that my cue, Rachel?
Yep, you're good to go.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, great to be with the Redmond Kiwanians today. I've done some other presentations like this. I did one not too long ago in Bend and also recently in Prineville, and they were both great groups. And so I'm hoping that's a Central Oregon thing. So I'm counting on a great session with you guys today, and really thankful that you invited me. Let me just give you a quick synopsis of who I am and whatnot, and my history. I worked in Eugene at the Register-Guard newspaper from 1970 to 1987 for 17 years. And then in 1987 came up to Seattle and worked at both Seattle dailies until I retired in 2015. And throughout both in Eugene and Seattle, my primary focus was college basketball, college football, mostly college sports. Inevitably, you do a few other things too, especially up here in Seattle where you got so much going on. But probably 95% of what I did over the years was cover college football and college basketball. One of the most fun things I did over the years was cover the NCAA tournament in college hoops. When I retired in 2015, I went back and tried as best I could to figure out how many weekends of the NCAA tournament I'd covered over the years, and as best I could come up with, it was 73 weekends. Of course, 3 weekends per NCAA tournament, and covered 20 Final Fours. So really, I'm hard pressed to think of one that I didn't really enjoy over the years. It's just so much drama and buzzer beaters and good memories covering the tournament. As far as Redmond, I've been in. I'm very familiar with your town. I've been in it and through it many times. My wife and I have a house up at Black Butte that we share with members of her family. So I've been through Redmond many times. Actually did some hiking at Smith Rock one time. When I think of Redmond and basketball, I'm reminded of Marty Lunan, who it's hard to believe, I guess played there, 14, 15 years ago now, and then went on to a really good career at the University of Oregon on some good teams. So anyway, what brings me to you folks today is a book that I wrote. I hope you can see it, Mad Hoops. It's on the 1970s period at the University of Oregon, the Kamikaze Kids. Just almost an indescribable 7-year period under Dick Harder. For Mike Patrick in your audience, I definitely detect a Beaver slant coming from you, and I'll just say that there is a big slice of Oregon State in the book as well, and I'll get into some of that. But the rivalry between those two schools, specifically in basketball during that period in the 70s, was like nothing else I encountered over the years in terms of rivalry. It was just dog eat dog, and those teams just went after each other. It was unbelievable, and all that is in the book. But anyway, on to the specifics. To give you a little bit of background to set the scene, back about 1970, Oregon entered a period in football where things kind of went south. They had been entertaining and occasionally a winning program, but through most of the 70s and 80s, it was not great times for football, and that sort of opened the door for anything that could capture the attention of fans down there, and so that turned out to be a space occupied by basketball. And so what played out, the genesis of how the Kamikaze Kids era played out was this. Around that period, around 1970, actually the 70-71 season, there was a veteran coach named Steve Belko, and it began to be rumored pretty heavily in Eugene that he was on his way out. He'd had like a 15-year tenure, kind of up and down under some difficult circumstances. It should be said, for a lot of the time, he didn't even have an assistant coach. His last couple teams were pretty good, like third place in the old Pac-8. But his era was coming to an end. And then at the same time, the other part of a kind of a two-part drama on the East Coast, a guy named Dick Harder at the University of Pennsylvania was having great success. He was a Penn alum from the early 50s, and he worked his way up the coaching ladder, and he had a really hugely successful 5-year run at Penn. Actually, the last 2 years were the successful part in the 69-70 and 70-71 seasons. Penn just lost 4 games and was a top 10 team both years. And so, but anyway, so you had these two forces taking place on opposite coasts, and by a bit of, I guess you'd say, serendipity, the two things came together. There was a classmate of Dick Harder and his wife Carolyn at Penn in the early 50s. A classmate named Henry Hood came to know Carolyn, and Henry was a big basketball fan, and through Carolyn he got to know Dick, and of course, Dick leaves and goes on and climbs up the coaching ladder, and so they stayed in touch. And meanwhile, Henry moved out to Portland. He was a businessman, was in both real estate and banking at various times. And anyway, so he moved out to Portland in the late 60s and became a booster of the University of Oregon. And when it became known that Oregon was likely going to make a coaching change after the 71 season, he put a bug in the ear of the Duck administration that, hey, there was this really successful coach back at Penn, a hot item nationally, who was having great seasons, and they just might be able to lure him out to Oregon. And so he was kind of working both sides of it, telling Harder and his wife that, yeah, the Ducks are interested, et cetera, et cetera. And lo and behold, it came about, and it was because of Henry Hood, this guy in Portland who orchestrated the whole thing. But anyway, so it was an interesting hire for Oregon, because Oregon had always been in the practice of really doing things on the cheap. There wasn't a lot of money to go around in the athletic department then. There was no Phil Knight. Phil was 20 or 25 years from being a real factor in terms of being a benefactor. He was busy trying to start up his own company. So it was common for Oregon to just hire from within. If a coach left, or even sometimes if you fired a coach, you usually would just hire the assistant coach. And so typically things had been done really cheaply there. But this was one case when the Ducks really went outside the box. They hired Dick Harder from Penn at the princely sum of $24,000 a year, and that was a lot of money back then. They promised him things like remodeled offices there on University Street in Eugene, and a big recruiting budget, because he was from the East Coast, and he was going to recruit chiefly in the East and Midwest. And so they made all that happen. And it's safe to say that Dick Harder turned Eugene and parts of Oregon, the Duck parts of Oregon, he turned those places upside down. There became this huge love affair with the Ducks and their style of play. It was very passionate in Eugene, where I was. I had a front row seat to it. I'm at a loss to remember any coach at Oregon or Oregon State who created a bigger stir. Now, certainly there have been coaches who won more in a lot of sports than Dick Harder did, but as for creating a stir and really making it a happening, which was the operative phrase back in the 70s, there was nobody who did anything quite like Dick Harder. He had, as deeply as the passion ran in Eugene, there was just about as deep an antipathy in the rest of the Pac-8 for Harder and the Ducks. They were the most frankly the most despised team in the league when they would go into to gyms up and down the West Coast. And the reason for that was Harder implemented this really aggressive style. The Ducks dive on the floor for loose balls, and they would take charges, and they did drills to bring those things into the program. They were extremely physical. The games tended to have a ton of fouls called, and there'd be a ton of free throws shot. Here's another thing that he did. About midway through his tenure, another coaching friend, I believe it was a junior college coach that he actually admired in California, told him about something he did, and that was he had defensive players in practice. There's an old drill called defensive slides, where you essentially have the defender with his outstretched arms mirroring the movements of the offensive player, and you slide your feet back and forth with your arms outstretched. And Harder came upon the idea through this friend of using bricks, masonry bricks, and he had players hold a brick in each hand while they did these slides, and he would have them, in various positions, like 90 degrees, parallel to the floor, or right hand upraised, left hand upraised, opposite hand down, whatever. But you can imagine these drills would go on for 30 or 40 minutes without a break, and try holding bricks out with your arms outstretched. It was tremendously grueling, both physically and mentally. But that's the sort of stuff that they did under Harder, and again, it was the just the aggressive style that caused so much furor in up and down the old Pac-8. He had so many detractors, in the rest of the league, including the great John Wooden at UCLA. Harder had come west from Penn with the express idea of challenging UCLA's dynasty, and Wooden was outspoken about the Oregon style. That he called it like a wrestling match. Harder also got comments like that from Marv Harshman, the great Hall of Fame coach earlier at Washington State and then at Washington, about the physical style. There was just a lot of critics of the style, but as I said, the whole thing was wildly popular in Eugene. I mean, Eugene took these guys on as their guys, and they after a really bad first year, they began to win, and they sold out MacArthur Court, the great old basketball building there, and you'd see season tickets showing up in probate wills and divorce settlements and so forth. It was really a big deal. It's hard to even express just what mania there was in Eugene for the program. You had kids, students camping outside on University Street, outside MacArthur Court, the night before a game. Before that was really done, they probably were one of the first in the country to do that, before it kind of became a thing with some students. Just to give you a personal note on it, at my old paper, the Register Guard, the coverage of Duck basketball was just off the charts. Anything related to Duck basketball was in the paper. And keep in mind, this was an era when there was no internet, there was no social media, Twitter, Instagram, or any of that. Newspapers were the ones that broke stories. There was just a great volume of coverage in the paper. There would be after the day after games, there would be a big game story, and there would be a column on the game, and at the same time, the paper, which was really good back then, frankly, a lot better than it is now, to be honest with you. The paper became, photographically very advanced. It was one of the first papers in the country back in, I want to say, like 1974. It was one of the first papers in the country to have color photography. That just wasn't a thing back then. Everything was black and white, but the Register Guard bought a sophisticated printing press that could do color. So oftentimes, with these Duck basketball games, the next day you'd have color photographs. So it was quite the deal. And at the same time, roughly about that time, the paper also hired a well-known photographer named Brian Lanker, who was a Pulitzer Prize winner. And his work, he would frequently shoot Duck basketball games, and his work was just routinely really sensational. So you sort of had the complete package. The big player, the preeminent player of that era was a fellow named Ronnie Lee, who was to those of you who might have witnessed that era, it really doesn't need any introduction. He was a 6'4", really muscular guard from Boston who was just perfectly suited for the style that Harder played. Just a very physical player, and really good, solid kid who was just so symbolized the whole program just in the way that he played. The other interesting thing was Harder had this really strange side to him. I guess you'd say it was his dark side. He had a really, it was like genetically or something. He had this really confrontational style. In a way, it's probably not a surprise that his teams played this way, but he loved to sort of create confrontation. And to give you an example, in his first year up at Washington State, this was January of 1972, and in a game I was at up there, a couple of his players had told him in practice at old Bowler Gym at WSU that it seemed like one of the baskets wasn't quite the right height. They didn't think it was quite 10 feet, and so on a Monday night TV game, the Ducks, instead of coming out to warm up, walked onto the floor with like 5 or 10 minutes before the tip off, and Harder asked the officials to have the baskets measured. And so the next thing you knew, you had a custodian coming out with a step ladder and a tape measure measuring the baskets. And keep in mind, you got a TV game that's supposed to start at whatever. I remember it was an 8 o'clock start. Whether it was supposed to be precisely 8, I don't know, but 8 or 8:05, whatever. But so the game ends up being held up for 25 minutes while the custodian measures the baskets. And as it turned out, it wasn't quite that simple, because both of them were slightly short. One of them was actually short by like 1.5 inches. So you had to, they had to adjust the baskets to get them to 10 feet. But that was just the kind of thing Harder did. He loved to create confrontation, and he very easily could have called this to the attention of WSU like the day before or earlier that day or whatever. But no, he had to wait till 7:50 or 7:55 before an 8 o'clock TV game. The other one, and this is the part where we get to Mike Patrick. In 1974, the end of the season, the Oregon's playing at Oregon State, and back in the day, some of you may remember this. There was a trophy that the two schools had. It's called the Chancellor's Cup, Chancellor's Trophy, and whoever they played 3 games back in those days, two conference games and one non-league game. that came during finals week for the two schools. And so whoever won the season series would get to keep the Chancellor's Trophy for a year. Well, it was a trophy with a gold ball symbolizing a basketball at the top of it. And so Oregon State is about to wrap up at the end of '74 at Gill Coliseum. They're about to wrap up their second win of 3 games that year. And so Jim Barrett, the Oregon State athletic director, appears on the baseline where the cheerleaders are, the Oregon State cheerleaders, and gives the trophy to a cheerleader named Rick Cooten, Coutin. And so he says, give this to Coach Miller, Ralph Miller, the future Hall of Fame coach from OSU. Give this, when the game gets over, give the trophy to Coach Miller. And so Rick Cooten, I think logically enough, as he explained it to me in Corvallis a few years ago, he began to think, what sense did it make for him to just go up to Coach Miller at the end of the game and give him the trophy? By then, fans are filing out of the arena, and there was no actual presentation per se. It was just, he was just going to give him the trophy. And so Rick thought, the fans really need to exult in this moment and enjoy the Beavers capturing the trophy. And so Rick Cooten decides in the last minute, there's a dead ball situation. Probably somebody, as I remember, somebody about to shoot free throws. I was there that night as well. And so Rick decides he's going to jog along the perimeter of the court and, holding the trophy high for the fans at Gill Coliseum to celebrate the moment, beating the Ducks 2 out of 3 in 73-74. And so he, the fans are roaring and whooping it up. And so Cooten makes the final turn, which is going to take him in front of the Oregon bench, and there's Dick Harder down on one knee. Harder frequently would coach on one knee with a towel folded up, the knee resting on the towel, and so Cooten jogs in front of the Oregon bench, and he wasn't taunting them or anything. It was holding up the trophy for fans high above, and so this is going on, and all of a sudden Harder sticks out his other leg and trips Rick Cooten, a 21-year-old cheerleader, and there was never any doubt that it was on purpose. Harder immediately admitted that it was on purpose. He eventually wrote a letter of apology to Rick Cooten, and a copy of which is in the book here. But it created kind of an ugly scene at Gill Coliseum, where if somebody had, some fan or student or whatever had decided to run onto the court and let's say accost the Oregon bench or something, it could have really created a bad situation. Ralph Miller, the OSU coach, got on the public address mic and essentially asked the crowd to cool it and whatnot. And it never materialized into anything serious, but it certainly wasn't a great moment for Dick Harder. But that was just what he did. He loved to create a fight, and certainly he created one that night. But anyway, you're probably wondering what happened to Harder. He had a 7-year tenure in Eugene. Things kind of slowly began to sort of peter out in the late 70s in 1978, and he had kind of run his course. It was, to be honest with you, I've always thought of it as it's like some sort of supernova in the sky. The thing burns so hot that it doesn't last very long. And he was never going to be a coach who stayed in one place for 19 or 20 years or 15 or 20 years, anything like that. It just wouldn't work that way. But anyway, so in 1978, he gets hired at Penn State. So he's going back to the state from whence he came. And he had a 5-year run there, which was really pretty unremarkable. Nothing great back there. And he was really kind of at a crossroads. So he ended up going to the NBA and as an assistant coach. He had a long career in the NBA as a respected defensive-oriented assistant coach. He had a brief, like a year and a half tenure. He was an NBA head coach for a year and a half at Charlotte when Charlotte back in, I believe, '88 had an expansion franchise, and of course that didn't work because he every loss really ate at him, and of course with an expansion team you're going to lose a lot of games. But anyway, that's where he ended up, and he ended up having gaining great respect as an assistant coach, and worked for some well-known people like Chuck Daly and Pat Riley, and for in the 90s for PJ Carlesimo with the Blazers. So he carved out a respected career as an assistant. But anyway, so that wraps up my thoughts. You can, the only thing I'd add is that you can find the book on Amazon if you'd like, or in stores down there. If you don't find it in a store, just you can order it, and it's called Mad Hoops, and it really was a very wacko, chaotic, controversial era in sports, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's $19, and if nothing else, keep it on your nightstand at night. It'll put you to sleep. So anyway, it's been great to be with you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have for as long as you have.
Yeah, who's your favorite Duck basketball player and your favorite Beaver basketball player?
Are you talking in history or today?
During your time covering them.
Oh, okay. Goodness sakes. Well, let me preface it first by saying that I actually covered Oregon State for most of those years. I covered Ralph Miller's teams through, for like 11 years, and then I became a columnist in Eugene. So I'd write columns on both schools. Wow. Favorite. Well, one who on the Oregon State side, one who was hard to forget was Lester Connor. I don't know if any of you guys remember him. Ended up playing in the NBA and being an assistant coach in the NBA. And in fact, I think he may still be in the. He was on OSU teams in the early '80s, and they went to the NCAA round of 8 in 1982, and he was the ringleader of that team. Really an enjoyable guy to be around. It's really hard to come up with just one guy. And as far as the Ducks, and again, I was never actually the beat writer on Duck basketball. I covered Oregon football, over the years, but basketball, it would be difficult to stray from anybody other than Ronnie Lee, who I mentioned earlier. He, to give you an idea, his impact, he's still the Oregon career leading scorer, going way back to the 70s. I mean, that's coming up on 50 years now. And if you look up the career leading scorers for each Pac-12 school now. They all come. The closest one in time to that era was in the 80s. It came like a decade later. So, and most of these guys have played when the 3-point shot existed, which of course was not in existence back when Lee played. So, I'd probably go with Lee. He was really enjoyable to watch. Anybody else?
Hard to argue with those guys, but were you there when Gary Payton was playing?
Oh yeah. At least I should add for part of it. I saw the first 3 years of the Payton era. Just he was a phenomenal player, and I still remember. I remember coming up to Oregon State. This would have been about 1986. I believe Payton's first season was 86, 87 at OSU, because I think he ended up finishing up in 90. But I remember sitting with Ralph Miller in the bleachers one day, and we were watching the end of practice or whatever. Ralph ran a real loose ship in terms of people, anybody could come in and watch practice. There was no such thing as closed practice, and he welcomed the media in and whatnot. He was great to be around. But anyway, I remember sitting with Ralph in the stands one day, and of course Ralph had that distinctive voice, and he looks down. Payton was a freshman then who had not played a minute yet. I mean, the season hadn't started, and I remember Ralph saying, "That kid could make me a hero again," and lo and behold, he did. I mean, he was a phenomenal player.
Yeah, I'd throw Peyton and AJ Green in there, and I'm a Duck guy, but I love watching those guys play.
AC Green.
Or AC Green. Sorry.
Yeah, he was. You're right. And AC was a real genuine person and enjoyable to be around and whatnot. He was a first class guy.
I was going to say we had season tickets back probably 78 on through for basketball, and we'd make the trip back and forth from Redmond on a Thursday. You'd drive over and watch the game, come back, work the next day, and then drive over on Saturday again. It was worth every minute of it.
Yeah, I hear you. Those were great times at Gill, as I'm sure you remember that when Ralph really got it going there in 80 and 81 and became ranked number 1 in 81. That was amazing.
What was louder in your opinion, Gill Coliseum or Matt Court?
It's interesting you bring that up. I always have always kind of thought that the loudest places I've ever been were. I always thought it was kind of a tie between Matt Court and Bowler Gym in Pullman, which is my alma mater. It's a little bit unfair because Bowler Gym only seated about 4,500. It was a real bandbox, but when it would get cooking, it was really, really loud. And MacArthur Court, I think those two were always kind of at the forefront of my thinking. But then when I think back to when Oregon State really had it going there under Ralph, especially in 81 when they were ranked number 1, I think Gill was every bit as loud as those other two places. It became a thing, and you would see this also at MacArthur Court in Eugene. I mean, everybody was in their seat, so early. It was like people wanted to see those guys warm up, and it was a big deal to see them. The team comes out at 7:30 or 7:35 for for an 8 o'clock game. I mean, it was a big deal to see them run onto the floor at those places. And you don't see that anymore. I mean, you know, if you're in your seat, you know, by the 7:30 tip or whatever, that's good enough. But boy, it was loud in both those places. Just, you know, and a great atmosphere for college basketball.
Yeah. I remember going to Matt Court and sitting in the upper levels, and you moved up there.
Yeah.
It swayed.
Yeah. Yeah. The scoreboard would jiggle, you know, it was on, as you remember, you know, it was on cable chains or whatever. And when it really got cooking in there, it would jiggle up and down on those chains. And I actually had a player or two, I think, well, it was one of the Ducks tell me that, you know, I think it was just his personal thing. He didn't, when it got that way, he didn't want to be underneath that scoreboard. You know, it was that menacing when it really got noisy in there. He would go out of his way not to be under the scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
Bud, thank you for sharing all your stories with us. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, I always love talking college hoops, and that was such a great era. And it's hard sometimes to even put into words how much of a phenomenon the Kamikaze Kids were in Eugene. You know, it was the hottest thing going by a mile. So anyway, thank all you guys, and appreciate you having me, and you all have a good day.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bud,
Bud.
for your time.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to continue the conversation, I'm sure we can get both of you connected. So, all right.
Rachel?
Yes.
Rachel, can I say one thing? I'm sorry, Mike made that wonderful announcement about the foundation, and I was actually busily contacting the Sisters Club off his recommendation for our donation from the foundation. So just real quickly before everybody goes, I can't thank you all enough. We have grown our business 262%, which tells us there's a lot of people in need and relying on mental health and counseling services in Central Oregon, and that the Kiwanis Club is coming up and bringing up the teens in Deschutes and Crook counties. We're just so appreciative. We could not do this without our community. And so just thank you very, very much. And I'm reaching out to the Sisters Club, and we've also reached out to Crook County Club. So it would be a beautiful interclub, Central Oregon interclub project to work on together. So thank you all very, very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, all right. So our thought for today is logic will take you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. That's from Albert Einstein. All right, everybody, have a great day. We'll see you again soon. Bye.